She has been the silent figure in the background of one of the greatest tennis careers. And there was a reason she didn't say anything. However, Mery Perelló finally spoke up when the world began to inquire about the relationship between her retired husband and a 20-year-old Filipino tennis prodigy. No one was prepared for what she said either, because this was never merely a tennis story. It was a tale of trust, legacy, and a lady who, despite having the best understanding of her husband, decided to allow him to contribute a little of himself to the goal of another. Stay tuned, because everything you believe to be true about Rafael Nadal's post-retirement life is altered by what Mery stated. Rafael Nadal has an almost legendary quality. With 22 Grand Slam victories, 14 French Open titles, a record-breaking 209 weeks at the top of the world rankings, and a left-handed forehand that resembled a controlled act of violence against the laws of physics rather than a tennis shot, the world watched Rafa bleed, fight, cry, and triumph on the biggest stages in the world for 20 years. However, there was a lady who most people never really looked at behind every single one of those triumphs, behind every sad trophy lift, every grimacing limp off the court, and every incredible return from injuries that would have destroyed lesser careers. Maria Francisca Perelló is her name. She is simply known to the world as Mery, or by her childhood moniker, Shiska. Her husband was born on the same island, Majorca, in Spain. And Nadal's sister introduced the two of them when they were teenagers, and after a few years of that initial encounter, sparks started to fly between them. When she first fell in love at the age of 17, it was with a boy who would go on to become the greatest renowned clay court player in the history of the sport. That kind of existence would have been too much for most individuals to handle. She didn't merely make it through. Inside, she constructed something of her own. Mery began working for the Rafa Nadal Foundation in 2012 and eventually became its CEO. For more than 10 years, she has led the philanthropic division of her husband's business and shaped its course. She completed her postgraduate studies at ESAD in Barcelona after earning a business degree from the University of the Balearic Islands. She is not an ornament on Rafa's arm. She is a force unto herself. However, she has consistently opted for privacy. She gave a straightforward explanation of her beliefs in a 2011 interview with The Telegraph, stating that she felt that following Rafa everywhere would put them at risk of losing their relationship and that the thought of constantly attending to his demands would make her feel inferior. That way of thinking remained constant. Mery remained carefully silent for 20 years while everyone was fixated on her husband's every grimace and grunt in court. The world paused and listened when she broke that silence, when the lady who had constructed her entire public persona around remaining out of the narrative abruptly came forward and talked about the relationship between her husband and Alex. However, you must first comprehend the girl who inspired her remarks in order to comprehend why they struck so deeply. Additionally, if you're already engrossed in the narrative, click the like button right away, since what follows is the part that no one anticipated. Consider yourself 13 years old. You come from a sports-loving family in Quezon City, Philippines. A former SEA Games swimming medalist is your mother. Your brother is an American college tennis player. You, on the other hand, are holding a tennis racket and have such a big dream that it would be reckless to express it aloud. Now picture that fantasy transporting you to a campus in Manacor, Majorca, constructed completely around the philosophy of one man, the greatest clay court player in history, rather than a local club or a regional academy, all the way to a Mediterranean island bathed in sunshine. That is Alex Eala's journey, and it is among the most remarkable tales in contemporary tennis. As a top junior in 2018, Eala enrolled in the Rafa Nadal Academy in Majorca, where she began a year-long journey based on Nadal's philosophy of unwavering work, mental toughness, and competitive desire. She wasn't a passing guest. She was ingrained in the local culture, training daily under the same values, rules, and standards that had created one of the greatest athletes in history. In 2023, Eala received her diploma from the Rafa Nadal Academy, with world champion EGS Fiatek serving as the keynote speaker. Take a moment to consider that. This graduation was not your typical one. This was a declaration that something very unique had influenced the young woman who was leaving those courts. And the world discovered just how unique it was in 2025. Eala achieved the highest rating for a Filipino player in WTA Tour history at the 2025 Miami Open, being the first Filipino player to go to the semifinal of a WTA 1000 event. Not only did she make it to the semifinals, but she also defeated players like Madison Keys and Eka Statek, who were in the top 10 in the world. At the age of 19, she played with the boldness of someone who has been taught to feel at home in any space. As well as for retirement, Raf and Nadal sent her a message as they watched everything play out. Eala talked on the incident with obvious emotion, stating that Rafa had messaged her for the first time and that she had just received his notification a few days later due to how hectic her week had been after Miami. After 6 years of training in the same system and 6 years of learning about his legacy, she received her first personal message from the guy himself because she had accomplished something momentous. That bond goes beyond mentoring. That is more in line with family. Mery Perelló was observing everything from the inside out, and the Nadal world had taken note of her. On November 19, 2025, precisely 1 year has passed since Rafael Nadal's last professional tennis match at the Davis Cup Finals in Malaga, Spain. With his family by his side, he sobbed as he left the court, the burden of a career that had finally been lifted after 22 Grand Slam victories and a lifetime of dedication. 365 days of retirement, parenthood, golf courses, foundation galas, long, peaceful mornings in Mallorca with Mery and their sons, and the peculiar, unchanging joy of not having to struggle anymore. Rafa Nadal then took up a tennis racket once more on that very anniversary. Not for an exhibition, not for a return, not for the cameras at a charity function, and not for the spectacle of a Legends tour. For Alex Eala, he took it up. Alex Eala, a Filipino tennis player, trained with Rafael Nadal at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor on November 19, 2025. As viewers consider Nadal's career and witnessed the 22-time Grand Slam champion rally with a player who grew up training in his academy system, the session attracted interest from all around the world. The two of them were locked into lengthy baseline confrontations and videos from the academy. After a year, Nadal remarked on social media that it was wonderful to be back on a tennis court. He also addressed her personally, stating that it was nice to practice with her and that he would be stronger the next time. Eala soon replied with 2 comments on Instagram. The internet did not sleep that night, first saying, "Thank you for today, Rafa," and then adding a second message, "Back like you never left." Millions of people watched the session's videos on all platforms. Fans from the Philippines were crying. Fans from Spain were shocked. The video of these 2 left-handed players, one a rising star, the other a retired legend, exchanging ground strokes on an indoor court in Mallorca was circulated by tennis fans worldwide as if time had stopped. Eala spoke passionately about the session, stating that it was extremely memorable for her and that training with Rafa is something that both adults and young children can only imagine. She called it a memory that would last a lifetime, saying that it was a pleasure to share the court with him and that this was the first time she had ever hit with him in her life. And somewhere in that building or watching from home was Mery Perelló, a woman who had spent 20 years witnessing the world attempt to take pieces of her husband. She had fiercely and purposefully used every tool at her disposal to protect their privacy, and she had developed a whole way of living centered around preserving the intimate world of their relationship. For the first time in a year, she saw her husband return to a tennis court. As she watched him perform it for a 20-year-old Filipino girl, she experienced an emotion she had not anticipated. Nobody, not even Mery, could permanently evade the question that the internet couldn't stop asking. Continue to observe. Social media is a multifaceted concept. It's a community. It is data. It is a link between cultures, languages, and oceans. Additionally, it can occasionally be something far less giving. Most of the reactions to the video showing Nadal practicing with Alex Eala on his anniversary went precisely as you would expect. Filipino supporters, who've seen Eala grow from a young kid to a world top 50 wonder inside the academy their idol established, expressed happiness, adoration, and pride. Everyone agreed that it was a lovely moment. However, beauty is not the end of the internet. Millions of postings and reposts began to receive comments. Most people were happy, but some people started asking different questions. A loud, persistent proportion. Questions about Rafa's decision to spend his retirement anniversary with Eala in particular. Inquiries concerning how intimate their relationship is. There were concerns about the significance of the man, who had publicly referred to his family as his everything, returning to a tennis court for a young woman his wife had never made public. Ella's coach, Joan Bosch, had previously told how Nadal personally intervened to help Eala at the academy, not out of duty, but because he understood the difficulties she was going through. Eala was shocked when Nadal picked up a racket and started hitting serves to illustrate what he was saying. Bosch had referred to it as the Rafa Nadal Academy's luck. However, when the internet first saw these information, it started to interpret them differently. The fan forums came alive. The same awkward question was posed in comment sections in several languages. Videos of speculation were generated by YouTube channels. The number of hashtags increased. This is the problem with public figures who protect their privacy. A vacuum is created when something breaks through that wall, even if it is completely innocent. Vacuums are then filled with whatever individuals decide to pour into them. Mery Perello's public persona was based on her refusal to comment, her lack of explanation, and her refusal to take center stage alongside her husband. For over 2 decades, she had maintained that posture flawlessly. However, something was different this time. Speaking about Nadal's character, Eala told Philippine broadcast network GMA that he is so grounded, has accomplished more than she could have ever imagined, and that it is really admirable that he is still so kind to everyone around him. The public's interest in their connection was only heightened by their kind and sincere remarks. Mery then made her decision. When the world learned that Mery Perelló had mentioned Alex Eala, this is what they anticipated. Some anticipated jealousy, the protective remarks of a wife guarding her domain. Some anticipated the CEO of the Rafa Nadal Foundation to make a cool, collected, and meticulously legal corporate statement. Some anticipated nothing at all, just another calculated silence from tennis's most reclusive woman. None of those things were what they received. Mery provided something far more uncommon. Something that could only come from a woman who had witnessed her husband devote parts of himself, his body, his time, and his unwavering mental energy to a sport he loved so much, sometimes seemed to love him back cruelly. In a Grand Slam final, she had witnessed him bleed through his foot. In press appearances, she had seen him cry. With their small kid and the spectators, she had witnessed his retirement at the Davis Cup, tears streaming down a face that had endured so much suffering. And a year after it was all over, she had seen him return to a tennis court with an instantly recognizable gleam in his eyes. Regarding Alex Eala, Mery allegedly said that she could see why Rafa had developed such a strong bond with a young Filipino athlete because helping Eala was not a diversion from Rafa's retirement. It was a continuation of who he was. The Rafa Nadal Academy was never merely a commercial venture or a marketing ploy. It was Rafa's response to the query, what happens to greatness when the competition ends? It was his method of confirming the principles he had upheld. When his body could no longer support them on tour, the discipline, humility, and refusal to accept limitations had nowhere to go. Eala was living evidence that it had been successful. Nadal addressed his family directly in his retirement farewell video, thanking his wife in particular, describing her as his ideal travel companion throughout his career, and stating that returning home to watch their son grow has been his source of strength. In this context, Mery interpreted the Alex Eala narrative as a continuation of the man she fell in love with when they were both youths in Morca, rather than as a rival for her husband's attention or a complication. A man whose first reaction upon witnessing a young athlete in distress was to stay put. It was to demonstrate to her how to use a racket. According to Bosch, Eala's coach, Nadal intervened because he understood what she was going through rather than out of duty. And Rafa had always been completely consistent with that instinct, that sensitivity that cut over the divide between legend and novice. By all accounts, Mery didn't say anything defensive. They felt pleased. She talked about her husband with the comfort of someone who has never questioned his fundamental identity. She discussed Alex Eala as a chapter in his legacy, and thus in hers, rather than as a complicating factor in their tale. Drama ready, the internet got something it wasn't ready for. It was given grace. And everyone was surprised by that more than anything else. The real narrative starts in the last chapter, so stay tuned. There is no scandal around Rafael Nadal and Alex Eala. It's not a contentious issue. It is more potent and less common than either. It is evidence that genuine excellence continues after retirement. It manages to continue providing. And when she examined that bond, the woman who has known Rafa for more than 20 years recognized exactly what it was. A gift, not a threat. This channel is the right place for you if this narrative touched you and gave you a whole new perspective on Rafael Nadal and the wonderful Alex Eala. We provide you with the behind-the-scenes tales of tennis that are seldom fully covered by the media. The feeling, the reality, the people underlying the awards and rankings. Click subscribe.